We're coming in hot. Eric's upset. Mark is a little bit worried about that fact. Erik only just learned what we're going to be discussing here about 30 seconds ago. Could be partly why he's upset. Wait, who's upset again? Erik or Mark?
I was fake upset. I was being dramatic.
But you were upset because Erik was upset.
Yeah.
I'm a sympathetic crier.
Right. So the topic for today is why do we hardly ever talk about bow hunting on this podcast? And it's not that it's been like a faux pas or like, a do not touch. It's just that
we're certainly not against it.
No. I mean, you guys aren't. I'm just kidding. I'm not either. But that's the thing is, for whatever reason, we haven't talked about it a whole lot. So we're going to discuss it here today. Probably one of those podcasts geared more towards the folks who are perhaps more like me in the room right now compared to Erik and Mark. And being that they haven't really done a whole lot, if any, bow hunting before. And perhaps why you should look into it, or maybe we'll confirm why you haven't. Who knows? Mark.
We'll get there.
You got the chills before we got into this one. So just for those who are listening right now, if you've listened for a while, you know Mark quite well. And usually I know when we're going to have a pretty exciting one because Mark starts getting the chills, and he always points it out.
Yep.
And the chills quickly came over him when we brought up bow hunting.
I'll tell you why, Jim. I love it. Now, there's people that bow hunt a lot more than I do. There's people that bow hunt, that strictly bow hunt. Like, their life revolves around bow hunting.
They don't even rifle hunt.
They may not rifle hunt.
I know
or they
people.
bow hunt during rifle season.
Well, yeah, there's those folks too, right? So, regardless, I love it. I don't do it as much as maybe I'd even like to. It's awesome. It's super fun. There's so many advantages and positives that, like, when we started talking about it, I got excited. I got the chills about it for a variety of reasons, including hopefully the opportunity to maybe encourage somebody who hasn't taken up bow hunting to give her a try.
Yep.
That's why I got the chills. It's happening again.
This is perhaps the obvious question in the room, so that's maybe a stupid question or whatever, but I got to ask it, and I feel like we can really get in on it a little bit deeper than perhaps just surface level. But when you're talking about bow hunting, the fact that you love it and it's really fun, I get that. But I also don't get that. So bow hunting's super fun. Is it because you got to get all this gear and practice with it nonstop, and then you go out and you have like pretty limited range overall? And I mean, I get that people really love it, but why?
I mean, fair enough. Like, saying something's fun is like great. Like, you think cars are fun, right?
True.
So it's kind of pretty general. Man, I like the times of year. I like the way the animals are acting. Yep. Like you said, I like the more intimate nature of it. You do have to get closer. So I mean, you're interacting with these animals at extremely close ranges, which can be exciting and heart pounding. The advantages. There's advantages with seasons, right? Additional opportunities. I mean, it's really endless. Like, if you're only rifle hunting, you're really cutting your hunting life a little bit short.
Yeah.
The first thing out of your mouth was the time of year and the way that the animals act during that time of year. Can you explain that for somebody? Because, if you're one of the people who hunts only rifle season, for example, you very well have probably noticed that people are going hunting many times before you. Mm-hmm. And usually they're bow hunters, right?
Yep.
Why is that? Is the primary reason behind archery hunters getting this advance, so to speak? Is it, do they get the advance because it's almost similar to when you have a muzzleloader hunt or a primitive weapons hunt where, you say, oh, well, they have more of a disadvantage, so we're going to let them go outside of this rifle season? Or does it have to do with the fact that the animals are acting differently, so can you get closer to them during that time, or what?
So yeah, there's a couple things, at play there, Jim. So you're hunting with, a weapon or a tool that, it's a lot shorter range. You're essentially at a disadvantage, right?
Right.
Yep.
So, the game departments in general kind of, I guess, at least my understanding, they're compensating for that by giving you an early season, and we'll take elk for instance, or we can even talk about deer because there's a lot of advantages with deer, Eric, as you know. But so like elk, you're gonna have a rut hunt, right? So, or at least in September. The elk they're rutting, they're callable, they're maybe a little bit.
They haven't been hunted yet.
They're
coming off 6 months of nobody messing with them.
Yep. So they've been unpressured, other than probably some preseason scouting. They're what's the word that I'm looking for? They're maybe more paying attention.
Apt to make more prone to make mistakes.
Yes, preoccupied.
Right. Their guard is down a little bit.
Their guard is down. Emotions high.
Yep.
Right?
Love is in the air.
Quite literally. And who isn't, a little bit more prone to make mistakes when you're in that kind of a headspace,
Yep.
And then, you're the weather's nice. I like that, right? You're not generally freezing your you-know-what off. And then, talking about deer, Eric, you've been scouting your you-know-what off lately. But deer aren't rutting that time of year.
Right.
But they're in their summer patterns. And like you said, totally unpressured. I mean, maybe even just talk about what you've been seeing lately.
Yeah, so two things. Just before that, you kind of mentioned like how game management agencies give bow hunters a longer season. So in Wisconsin specifically, back when I worked at the DNR, we did we always analyze how many deer are killed during the gun deer season. We have the 9-day gun deer season, which is one of the times where there are most hunters in the woods in the state, at any time. The past few years, the overall gun harvest has been declining, but yet the total deer kill in the state is staying the same. So people are still killing the same amount of deer. It's just a matter of when and what weapon they're choosing to hunt with that's ending in that end result. So now we're seeing a trend where we're kind of in Wisconsin specifically, we're seeing a few less gun hunters, but we're seeing more archery hunters.
Really?
So it's interesting to see that kind of you take away a little bit and then you add a little bit on the other side of the scale.
That's bizarre. Does that have anything to do with the crossbows coming in?
It does. Yes.
Okay, because as you mentioned that, I'm hearkening back to, in many ways I look at the bow and arrow as like the manual transmission of hunting.
Mm-hmm.
And you think of people nowadays, there's so many examples of it. In cars, of course, is what I naturally gravitate toward, but there's so many other examples of where people are moving away from the old primitive, quote unquote. Of course, you look at some of the bows nowadays, there's nothing primitive about them.
Right.
But the quote unquote primitive way of doing things, the old school, the more elbow grease, and everybody's moving towards the more automated ways of doing things. And so you would think that it'd be natural that everybody would be getting ready to just pick up a rifle.
Right.
Rather than doing something that it seems takes more skill and practice and time. And
well, the other thing that's surprising to me there is, we kind of keep hearing about this overall decline, right? So I would have almost expected to see those harvest rates going down together,
right?
And along with that, or I guess I'd focus group of one here, right? Because I love to bow hunt, and I also love to gun hunt as well. So I would have assumed that those folks who may have picked up a bow or a crossbow, we can hunt, in Wisconsin, we can hunt with crossbows during our archery season, would still be gun hunting and possibly taking an additional animal, and that's
especially if you're using a crossbow,
right? It's
just basically a gun that shoots arrows.
People will debate that they are or aren't more effective.
Oh man,
that was so diplomatic. Jimmy was not as diplomatic. Triggered.
I think what Jim's trying to say there.
Leave your comments below.
Did I just drop a pretty huge bomb there into the archery world?
I think it's like I said, it gets debated there, and I think there's feelings at all ends of the spectrum. I know where I don't know. Here's what I'll say. Again, focus group of one. I'm all for anything that gets somebody in the woods for the first time or more or at all, right? We need more folks out there. And actually, I'm okay having crossbows during the regular archery season. I am. I don't care, right? I do think, though, I think back on the opportunities that I usually say something different, flubbed up. And a lot of them happen because I was either trying to draw my bow or I had to stay at full draw with my bow. To where, like, I'm pretty confident with the crossbow, like, would have got him. Like I said, I'm okay with crossbows. I'm just saying I think there is a difference.
Right.
Okay, right.
Yeah. And then, so the other question...
But the crossbows coming into play were probably also part of the reason why the archery harvest has either gone up or increased.
Yep,
okay. Because now that's become a thing, so it
just
makes it a little bit more. Now, were they finding that people... you know what? I guess I've already dropped some politically incorrect bombs, apparently.
Oh, keep them coming.
Were they finding that the people getting crossbows were just your average Joe and Jane, or were they finding that a lot of the people that were coming in then were more, perhaps handicapped in some kind of a way that required the use of a crossbow? Is that happening? Or did those folks already have the opportunity to hunt with a crossbow?
Yes.
Okay.
So for years prior to this, you had to basically qualify to shoot a crossbow during the bow hunting season.
Okay.
And that was like some kind of injury or, whatever. You basically had to have the doctor's letter.
Yeah, something prevented you from having the ability to draw.
Right.
Yes.
And now they've opened it up to where anyone can use a crossbow. You just have to denote that you're going to be doing so, and then you get a separate license. So they are able to kind of track whether or not the deer was harvested with a compound bow or a traditional bow or a crossbow. So a lot of the purists their argument has been, well, now that we have crossbows out there on the landscape, we're seeing, all these deer getting killed before the gun deer season opens up. And while you definitely have more people in the woods bow hunting now than you did prior to that, I don't think right now there's anything that really supports that. You have more people in the woods, but that's just that comes along with it when you open up more opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
They're not able to pin, to my knowledge, that crossbows are, responsible for, let's say, 45% of the harvest, where compounds are for the rest of the archery harvest. I don't think there's anything like that just yet.
Right.
Well, and I feel like we've had this argument already. Like it happened when we started putting wheels on our bows.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
It's the same thing.
You look at the trad. People who've, done traditional archery for years, and all of a sudden compounds hit the scene. And I feel like we're almost just like reliving this thing just with crossbows.
You guys and your stupid wheelie bows.
I love it.
Yep. And then, like, the other side of that coin is with the wheelie bows, the compound bows, it's interesting because in like the early 2000s, you saw like, okay, this bow hit 300 feet per second. It's a speed demon. Now the next year it's like 315. Then all of a sudden, I feel like several years ago, it kind of topped out at like 340 feet per second, 350 feet per second, and speed was this huge craze in the archery world. And then since then, I would say that phase probably climaxed about 5 years ago, and since then, 10 to 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And since then, you've almost seen it kind of like calm back down a little bit. Like Mark and I were just talking this morning, like we both kind of feel like the best arrow speed, where you can get the best arrow flight and the most, like, your most tunability out of your bow is right around 280, 285 feet per second.
Yep.
So a lot of these speed-crazed bows, people are almost, you buy the bow that shoots 340, 350 feet per second, then automatically you start tuning it down, shooting a heavier arrow, decreasing your draw weight, all that stuff to get this, speed demon and now come down to that 280 threshold.
Well, and then, do you remember that? There was kind of a period of time there where overdraws were like all the craze, where you essentially, I guess, extended your arrow shelf back.
Yep.
And so you could shoot a much shorter, lighter arrow and gain speed, but you just don't really see that anymore.
Right.
Can I bring something up? All this talk about tuning and stuff with your bow. Mark, for a guy who always says that when it comes to rifles, hey, these bullets come in a box of 20 and I can get this rifle from the factory and it works.
Yep.
Yet you go out and you shoot bow and arrow. You got to tune your arrows and tune your bow and tune your whatever. Bow? Like, I got to say, archery people, and I know I'm starting to get into it myself, and I'm like, I'm cringing and kicking myself as I get into it myself. Archery people, there's so much more, I feel like, we've just started some reloading, and you're going to hear about it soon on the podcast here for those listening. I'd rather do that. As I'm listening to more and more people talk about, you gotta tweak the something shelf. I don't remember what it was. You gotta something about that. You gotta tweak where your knock is located. You gotta shoot it at paper. Then you gotta shoot it at all these other distances.
Yep.
There's so much stuff.
I mean, it's definitely a technical, intricate, activity, right? Which, again, for dudes and dudettes that love to reload, right? That tinkering is part of the fun, right? And you're sorting it out. I'll say this when I bow hunt, like I said, there's people that are way more into it. I mean, I love it, but there's people that are into it from that tinkering aspect. When I get my bow set up, I'm going to a pro shop.
Fantastic point, because the pro shops, your local mom and pop pro shop is kind of like a dying breed right now. Like, we're just seeing less and less of them.
Yeah.
But they are still the best place. Like if you want to get into bow hunting but you don't necessarily want to, find the perfect arrow that flies the best through paper at 20 yards or whatever. That's just an example. You can go to your local pro shop and say, hey, I want to deer hunt this fall. I need a bow that's going to kill a whitetail deer. I need an arrow and a broadhead that's going to get the job done. Can you help me find that? They're going to be able to help you with all that.
Oh, you don't have to do all that crap yourself.
Exactly. Yep. You can just literally walk into a pro shop. Those are the most knowledgeable folks out there, and they're going to be able to pick any of the bow off the shelf. You can give them a budget that you're trying to stay within, and they'll find a setup that's going to work for you. It is not that hard to kill a whitetail deer with a bow, like physically speaking,
Yeah.
You mean as far as getting the gear?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
As far as getting the gear, getting it tuned properly.
Right.
And then becoming proficient enough with it to shoot it, probably very accurately from 20 to 30 yards and even beyond in fairly short order. And again, that shop, they're going to help you pick the bow. They're going to take your measurements. They're going to fit it to you. They're going to find something that fits your budget, and they're going to be able to marry the right components to that bow that are going to suit you and your needs.
Yeah.
And then it's up to you to practice.
Right, exactly.
So really, I just got myself in my own problem when I got a trad bow, right?
Yeah, you really put yourself in a pickle there, Jim, because now it's all on you. Okay. Well, and I shouldn't say that because there's awesome people that teach amazing classes out there. There's awesome YouTube channels. Yep.
Right.
So there's a lot of information out there. We're lucky in that regard.
Yep.
And then you got to practice.
Yep. But to your question earlier, like you were talking about deer behavior and all that stuff.
Oh, yeah.
One of the really cool things about it is you get that first crack at the whatever animal it is that you're going after before anyone else has hit the woods. So if you, like, for example, you talked about scouting. Right now is my favorite time to be scout. We're in mid-August right now, so we're about a month away from Wisconsin's bow opener, and now's my favorite time to be out there scouting because you can pick up on a pattern or find like the hot sign, find out what the deer are doing right now before the season is opened, and you can kind of take advantage of them having their guard down, of not really, they haven't adjusted to pressure yet. That first weekend is a blank slate. Everyone has their opportunity to get out there and try and shoot a buck or, shoot a deer before everyone else has kind of got out there and messed with them. And then then in-season scouting becomes that much more important. But for the early first couple weeks of the season, you can really capitalize on that scouting that you do ahead of time.
Well, and then, you scout a little bit. Maybe you find some bucks. You at least know they're there, right?
Yeah.
You may not kill them, but you know they're there. And so that gives you a high confidence level when you hit that area early. And then, like you said, Eric, these deer, we're talking about deer specifically right now, and maybe even more specifically white-tailed deer.
Yeah.
They're on summer patterns.
Right.
They are patternable. They're gonna be on a consistent program where you might be, like you said, opening day, you might be able to capitalize on that and be done pretty early, which is a blessing and a curse.
Yeah, and you don't have to feel like, and I think it applies to elk and mule deer too. I could be wrong. I haven't elk hunted yet, but I do think it even does apply a little bit to mule deer as well. But like last year, this was with whitetails. It was the week before the archery season. I had scouted all these other places. There was a spot that I had just kind of like left unchecked off my radar. And I went in there the Sunday before our archery season opened, so 6 days before opening day. Went in there to hang a camera, and there was sign everywhere. There was a few early scrapes opening up. There were a few rubs that literally had like, they were so fresh they still had velvet like interlaced.
I mean, that is insane to me. That is so early. I mean, we're talking what, around September 15th?
It was September 7th. I'm pretty sure I have photos of on my phone of like these super fresh rubs and fresh scrapes, and I knew that like next weekend that's where I needed to be, and went off that hot sign and got lucky. There were a bunch of other people hunting the area, so it just as well could have been someone else, but got lucky and shot a buck that Sunday of the season. So season lasted a day and a half, in Wisconsin last year.
And how did that make you feel?
Good, because then I bought more tags in other states, which made my wife feel very mad. Speaking of upset. But yeah, that's one of the advantages, I think, to like getting that first crack at animals, that once the gun season in Wisconsin, just using that as an example, and that's, I think, pretty representative of a lot of the states, you're coming in there at a time that is usually post-rut. The animals have already done their breeding, and the archery hunters have already kind of pressured them, for lack of a better word. They've been out there messing with them, trying to get in range, spooking animals, missing them, stuff like that. So if you are exclusively gun hunting, you're kind of taking a lot of that. If you look at the season as a pizza pie, you take the majority of that pizza and you put it off to the side, and now you're focusing on 2 slices of it.
Right.
Whereas if you are archery hunting, you are muzzleloader hunting, then you got the whole pie.
Right.
Well, exactly. I mean, you look at, like, if you love to hunt, which if you're hunting, you probably do.
Yep.
And you're only rifle hunting, it's like, my goodness, like you could be extending your season for months.
Right.
And, you look at a state like, like Wisconsin, right? The way our seasons are structured, you can buy a gun buck tag and an archery buck tag.
Yep.
So you're looking at potentially being able to shoot 2 bucks, or at least hunt 2 bucks.
Yeah.
You look at a state like Nebraska, you can shoot 2 bucks, and that, and check regulations change, so check them. At time of date, this is how I understand it. But Nebraska, you can buy 2 archery tags, you can buy 2 muzzleloader tags, or you can buy 1 rifle tag and a muzzleloader tag, or you can have 2 buck tags, only one of which can be a gun deer tag, right? Or a state like Montana, right?
Yeah.
You can buy an elk tag and you can hunt the archery season, which is pretty long archery season. If you don't fill that tag, you can roll that over into the next season and hunt with the weapon that's specified for that season.
Which is awesome.
That's amazing.
Yep.
And then some states aren't like that. You look like Washington, my home state. If you buy an archery tag, you're hunting the archery season.
Yep.
If you're buying a muzzleloader tag, you're hunting the muzzleloader season. So different states are structured different ways, but they do open up different / additional / unique opportunities.
Right.
It could be different for everybody. Somebody who follows all archery stuff might feel differently than I do, but what you guys are saying, the rifle season definitely, it's seeming, as you talk, more and more shorter and shorter to me. Is it the case? Is it the case everywhere? Everybody, I feel like what I follow and subscribe to makes it seem as though rifle hunting is the hunting, and archery hunting is just kind of something that happens. Too.
Yeah,
but actually, no, it's only a small little piece. Is it the case in a lot of other places too?
Yep.
Like
definitely.
Your rifle chances are only in very relatively slim periods of time.
Take like a state like Illinois or Iowa, where they have like Illinois, like I think they only have 2 full weekends of statewide shotgun season.
They don't even have rifle.
Yeah.
Regular centerfire cartridge.
Right. So if you know, they don't. So if you're a weekend warrior kind of guy, you're limited to like 4 days,
Right.
Whereas if you are bow hunting, you have October 1st through end of January, and you start of February in some counties.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, and a lot of that is attributed to your reduced chances of success. You know, you have a lower odds of killing an animal because your range is limited and all stuff like that. But
which is why you just get really good at it.
Exactly. Yep. Figure it out.
Yeah.
But, you know, and then we've talked a lot about early season opportunities, rut opportunities, but then there's also a lot of late season opportunities.
Yep. And I think the rut opportunities is the one that's most attractive to people. There are some states where you can gun hunt during the rut, but the majority of states, your rut hunt, your quintessential hunting during the peak of the rut, whether that's, you know, elk, which is going to be in September, or mule deer and whitetails, which is going to be in, you know, late October or, you know, throughout the first couple of weeks in November, that's always quintessential bow season. So that is like if there's one reason to do it, your odds of getting an animal in range is a lot lower with archery equipment, but during the rut, anything can happen, you know?
Anything can happen. And you've got a really cool element in both those things, or both the seasons with either deer or elk, where you have that calling interaction.
Yep.
Which, again, here come the chills, Jim.
Yep. There they are. Yep, he's got them.
It's a real thing, folks.
Yep.
Dude, like elk during the rut, like just amazing. Whitetails during the rut, amazing.
Yeah, you get to see the best animal behavior of the season right there.
What are the whitetail? What are they doing primarily? I know the elk. You know, you see all the videos and they're like, "Wah!" You know, making all that crazy sound.
Yep.
What do the whitetails do? Or do they make like a big sound, or is it just kind of the way they act?
I mean,
they do grunt and they will snort wheeze, which is like you know, like if an elk bugle is
and we're gonna have Erik do one here right now. All right, there you go.
Yep.
Snort wheeze.
burp, burp.
They also burp.
Yeah, they burp. They walk around the woods. They walk around the woods burping and wheezing at things.
Yeah.
Being really ticked off.
And it's amazing. But yeah, I mean,
okay,
like,
so
you know, I was going to say, like, I mean, a lot of people, you know, talk about, you know, the, you know, bull elk bugling and the scream is just like, yeah, and it is off the charts. But like, if you're in the whitetail woods on a cold, crisp day and all of a sudden you just hear that burp, burp,
right,
and then you give them a couple of those things back and all of a sudden those leaves start, you know, you're like, oh God, he's coming. Like, I mean, it's cool.
So that explains too another thing that I always wondered when I saw you watch videos and things of people that are archery hunting. I always wondered to myself, how the heck are they getting so close?
Yeah.
And they got to be screwing up stuff all the time, right? And that just doesn't make it to the highlight reel.
Mm-hmm.
But it's got to be that rut thing.
Oh yeah.
Because you hear all kinds of people talk all the time about how difficult deer are to hunt, and I'm not going to say that I'm saying they're not difficult to hunt. But I kept wondering because, and I think it's because of all the videos I'd watch.
Yeah.
I just kept seeing people within 15 yards of a deer, 10 yards of a deer, and just thwap, thwap, thwap.
Yep.
And I'm like, geez, they make it seem like you could practically just be walking out in the woods tripping over deer.
Which during the rut, if you're ever gonna have that time where like you're literally just walking into the woods and get a quick buck, that's when it's gonna happen. You know, like,
I mean, you could do it with no scouting, with never jumping into a place before. Like you said, Eric, anything can happen.
Yep.
I mean, and you hunt whitetails a heck of a lot more than I do. But one thing I was going to have you, because we're talking about the rut. So describe maybe, like, in contrast, like a mid-October bow hunt for whitetails versus like a first 10 days of November hunt for whitetails.
So like the first...
So that's a difference of what, 2 weeks?
3
weeks?
2 to 3 weeks, yeah. Which like seems like such a tiny, you know, frame of time. Exactly. But really so much changes in the matter of days when you're talking about rut activity, you know?
Well, hey, look at some of those guys used to come back after World War II. They got married in like 2 to 3 weeks. So that was prime rut time, baby boom.
Look at a bar on a slow Tuesday. Look at a bar on a slow Tuesday night, and then look at that same bar on Friday and Saturday night, and the rut's in full swing. Yep, exactly.
Just in a matter of a couple of days. You know, aliens are probably tuning into this podcast right now, and they are preparing based on the human rut cycle.
Yep.
I've been going to the bar on the wrong night.
Yeah, we're only hunting Fridays and Saturdays
Club's now going up on a Tuesday after all.
Yep, exactly.
What were you saying? It was more important than what I brought
so
up.
like, you know, your mid-October sign or your mid-October time frame is going to be a lot more laid back, and you need to be more like surgical with your hunt, I think. You walk into the same wood lot in early to mid-November, and you might walk in there and there's going to be sign all over the place because you've had all of September, all of October, and then maybe the first few days of November to accrue deer sign, whether that's a scrape, a rub, a trail that's just beaten down. So in October, when you do find that sign, when you find like a rub line that is, by rub line, I mean, you look and there's a tree that's rubbed. And so let's say north, south, east, west. You got your basic directions. On the east side of every tree, there's a rub. You know that deer is coming from the east because he's walking and rubbing stuff in the same direction. So on a late October hunt, you can look at that tree, see, okay, I have 10 rubs here within 100 yards. Every rub is on the east side of the tree. I'm going to keep going further and further east and set up as close to where I think that deer is spending the most of its time. He's not going to be walking around in daylight as much as he might be in November. But if you can get really close to where he is hanging out by reading something like a scrape or a rub or something like that and spending the most of your time really close to him, you might get lucky and have him stand up out of wherever he's hanging out of his bed usually, and you might get him 100 yards from where he kind of lives.
What, do they only rub on their way out, not their way back?
So they will rub on the way out and back. Usually what you can do is you're piecing together the puzzle a little bit by when you're looking at the sign. So a lot of times, you'll find an area where you can look at a map and think to yourself, I bet that's where they're spending the most of their time. So, for example, if you're walking into a piece of land that you're hunting, and right up by the field edge, you see a bunch of rubs from the field edge going back deeper into the timber, you can assume that those are nighttime rubs that are happening after the deer comes out into the insecurity of a wide open field at night to eat, and then those rubs are being made as he's going back into bed in the morning.
Oh, okay.
So in that instance,
probably not chilling out in the middle of the wide open.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So in that actually is a great point, because in that scenario, what you would do is you would have that in mind that, okay, those deer are feeding out in this field at the nighttime hours. I'm going to get in super early in a morning hunt, and I'm going to get behind where they're. So if the field is to the west, the cover is to the east, you're going to get behind them and get into the east and wait for that deer to come off the field and come back into his, quote unquote bedding area.
Yeah, you're going to cut him off before he gets to his bedding location.
It's essentially a ambush. You're waiting for him to come back home and put an arrow through his lungs.
It's a trap.
Yes, exactly. It's definitely a trap.
And what happens if what happens if the wind's on your favor and you got to go back and the wind's going from you down to the deer as he comes back?
So that's the hard part about like that October time frame is you got to wait till it is like really, really perfect. You're not going to just throw hazard to the wind and go in and be like, all right, I'm just going to hope that he comes from a different way today, because odds are he's not. During that time frame, he's especially if it's an older deer, he's probably very methodical with his movements. He probably only moves under certain conditions and stuff like that. So then you would wait until you have those perfect conditions, and then you'll try and get in there.
Oh, because if you blow it up and then you educate him on where you are, you're back to square one.
Exactly.
Having to find him again.
Yep. You hear like our friends at the hunting public talk about spots all the time that are a 1 or 2 hunt spot, and like they for example, they just did one where they talked about this spot that's like the hub of wheel. It's like literally 50 yards off the road, off a gravel road. Aaron shot a deer there last year where you could literally see the car is parked on the road, and this buck walked right across the road.
It's my kind of spot.
Exactly. So now the weird thing is about that.
# shed crazy. What up?
Yeah.
Road hunter.
Yep.
Purebred.
Exactly. So speaking about the one hunt spot, that's one of those areas where you got 1 or 2 chances at it. So you're not going to go in there when everything is. You're not going in there unless everything is buttoned up in exactly how you want it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So now, to contrast that, in November, during the rut hunt, you're going to go in and you're probably less focused on sign, because if you are taking sign into consideration, you're going to be overwhelmed because there's going to be way more scrapes, way more rubs, there's a lot of sign in the woods that time of year. So a lot of times what you'll do is you'll focus on where the majority of the deer, does especially, are kind of hanging out. People there's always the debate about like baiting and stuff like that. Well, during the rut, the best bait pile that you have is a group of does that are hanging out and laying in a area consistently. So then you'll hunt the downwind sides of those bedding areas, and then you'll get bucks cruising from where they're hanging out to where, the does are, and they're just walking on the downwind sides of that. You always hear the term cruising. Cruising, all that is bucks moving from one spot to another with the wind in a way that they can smell what is upwind of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's all cruising is.
Oh, okay.
And
you're down.
Well, and they're probably crisscrossing, like essentially crossing over, not taking these doe trails that are heading back to the bedding, and they might pick up a hot doe.
Exactly.
That's gone either in or out of there, or like you said, or is bedded down in there.
A few years ago, I shot a buck that was 100% doing that. I was set up on a ridge top where I was way up high, and there was really good bedding on each side of the ridge. So the ridge came up to a high point. There was good bedding in this bottom, good bedding on the other bottom. And the buck that I ended up killing that afternoon was literally just walking the top of that ridge and, scent checking the intersecting doe trails that went up and over the ridge from one bottom to the next. So it basically kind of did a upside down U-shaped movement if you're looking at that from like a topography standpoint.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas he was just walking right on top of that ridge, trying to check for any scent of does that were in the area recently. So
you want to be, if I'm following you right, they're going to be cruising, which means they want to be walking towards does, but also having the wind coming from the direction they're walking to.
Yep.
So that way they can smell what's ahead of them.
Yes.
Right? And you want to be not ahead of them when they're going towards the does.
Right.
You want to be on their way back.
Sort of. So you'll hear the term just off wind.
Just off wind.
So, for example, let's say we keep using east to west. We have
that's easy.
Yeah, there's a buck that hangs out. He beds to the east. There's a lot of does that bed northwest of him. What he's going to do is walk east to west on a northwest wind or a north wind, kind of like a crosswind. Or sometimes, too, you'll hear about bucks that there's a lot of theories out there that bucks like to move with the wind at their back. So in a situation like that, if he is coming from the east...
It's like having eyes in the back of their head.
Exactly, because they can look and they can see what's in front of them, and then they can smell whatever is upwind of them.
Right.
So that just off wind theory is, okay, if it makes the most sense for a buck to be moving in a spot with a due north wind, you might want to get in there on like a northwest and northwest. So the wind still sets up and makes sense for that buck to use that travel corridor, but it is just enough westerly breeze in that north wind that you can get in there and get really close without blowing your wind right in the direction that he's usually approaching from. So you're kind of threading the needle. If you're
getting as close as you can without him hopefully being able to pick you off.
Yeah, exactly. And you're going to spook a lot of deer doing that.
Wind is so crazy.
Yeah.
There's like literally particles of us floating out there.
Yeah.
And it's just entering deer taste buds.
Yep.
I'm gonna bring something up that I find, like, and people you talked about winds. Okay, the wind's out of this way and out of that way, and so set up here, which I generally, I try to do. But why is it when I get in the tree 100% of the time, the wind switches every 5 minutes?
I know.
Well,
and then
it shouldn't be
literally
surprising.
Within like a couple minutes, I'm like, okay, cool. I can essentially hunt this 180 and that's where if I'm going to get a crack at a deer, it's going to be. And then 5 minutes later, I'm like, okay, I'm going to hunt this other 180.
Yeah.
And I'm not talking about 180-inch deer. I'm talking about 180 degrees of a circle.
Yeah.
It shouldn't surprise us, though. We were just out of the Vortex Extreme where the wind seemed to change every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
That's true.
Oh, you got to hold left. Okay, held left. Nope, you missed left. So go back to the right. Oh, you missed right that time. Well, we're out of shots. On to the next stage.
Yeah, definitely. And it does seem like when we were at the extreme, we were in the mountains basically, and here in southwest Wisconsin, we're in like the hill country, the driftless area. So in those hilly areas, it does seem like you deal with way more swirling. If you're in like flat, northern Illinois farmland.
Okay, yeah, sure.
I think you got a little bit more consistencies that you can play with there. And there's always going to be things like man, I wish I knew who mentioned it. Was like Dan Infalt or Joe Elzinger. It's one of those guys mentioned once where if you're hunting an area where you have water, and this was super interesting to me. So like, let's say you're hunting near a lake or near a pond or something like that. You might have a wind that is blowing from the pond to you, but as the sun starts to go down, your thermals will override the wind. So even if the wind is coming from the pond to you, your scent thermals, and you can confirm this by throwing milkweed in the air, are going to get sucked down to that pond almost regardless of what the wind is doing, especially if it's a light breeze. Unless it's really gusty, you can pretty much bank on your scent falling down towards water when you're hunting near it, which I just thought that was really interesting. Really weird.
Noted.
Yeah.
Wow. So scent's got to be a pretty, obviously, as we've discussed, pretty big thing when you're archery hunting. Is most of the time when you're archery hunting, are you mostly posted up, sitting still, waiting for something to go by? Or are you running, gunning? I like the most of the stuff that I've seen, people are posted up in one spot sitting, and then something happens to walk by just the right time, right moment, right place, and they take a shot. But also, I got to know, because I also feel like I've heard of it, I just haven't seen it as much. I got to know if there's people out there kind of running, gunning.
Oh, yeah. Especially for elk and mule deer. Like
How does that happen?
I mean, I think for elk and mule deer,
just takes 1,000 blown stalks and then one good one.
I mean, oftentimes, most, like I said, most, right? I mean, people definitely hunt elk out of tree stands, and they hunt mule deer out of tree stands at times. But I'd say most of it is run and gun, spot and stock, trying to, and then trying to set up a calling scenario where you can call, you've gotten yourself to a location, the wind is right, maybe you ripped a bugle and you got a response. Then you're, refining your setup, trying to get closer, close the distance, and put yourself in the right spot for, that bull to come through and hopefully get a shot, which sometimes I get shots at them. I just don't hit them. But
a lot of trees in the woods with arrows in them.
Oh, my gosh. And then, mule deer, essentially it's almost like a close, I'd say in general, right? Probably maybe like a up-close game that's really not dissimilar to how you would hunt them with a rifle.
Yeah.
You just have to get closer. Oftentimes people say, like, where rifle hunting ends, bow hunting begins.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of truth to that because, and I'm not saying that rifle hunting is easy by making the statement because
it's not.
It's not.
Flat out.
But where you might be able to glass up a buck and potentially even just take the shot from where you were glassing from, not always, now you're planning your stalk with the bow.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, perfect example would be the time when we took that one in Nebraska.
Yeah.
That was a shot that we could have taken with a rifle. 225 yards wouldn't be a poke with a bow.
Right.
But when you see that and you have a rifle, you think to yourself, oh my gosh, this is like an ideal shot. This is perfect.
Yeah.
I don't even have to go on maximum magnification. It's just like, I felt close to that deer. With a bow, it would have been like, yeah, that thing's forever away.
Right. When you're talking about mule deer there, I kind of had a epiphany, so to speak, so we always talk. Wow. Yeah, exactly. Light bulb went on. The world makes sense after this podcast. I'm just going home because I just figured it all out. So we talk about a lot of times, especially with whitetails, setting up close to where they're bedding and all that stuff. So mule deer isn't that dissimilar to whitetails. The big thing is typically if you are spot and stalk hunting mule deer, you're glassing them up from a long ways away.
It's more open country.
Like last year, I was out in the Badlands where there's like literally no trees, and I spotted a buck probably 800 yards away, something like that. And I got down and was able to make a stalk on him. And now... So we talked about bedded whitetails. Now, what you would do if you're hunting whitetails there is you're getting as close to that bed, and then you're probably setting up. Now, you can't see the deer because there's tree cover on the landscape in whitetail country, whereas mule deer country is wide open. Mm-hmm. So you might try and close that extra 15, 50 yards, whatever it is, and then actually get a shot at him when he's in his bed or close to it.
Mm-hmm.
The only difference there is in the whitetail game, you can't really see just because of the nature of the landscape. You're still trying to get really close to that bed. You're kind of predicting based off your scouting and your map research where those bedding areas are, and you're accessing it just like you would on a spot and stalk mule deer hunt, but then you're setting up and kind of waiting on that ambush, you know? So that's kind of the parallels I think that you can draw from, like, if you are a mule deer guy that's thinking about whitetail hunting, that's the parallel you can draw, and I think the same can be said vice versa.
Well, yeah, and whitetails aren't the only deer hitting egg either, right? So we're talking, you're talking about earlier, like reading rub sign, which may not be something that you're finding on maybe a mule deer buck that's hitting an egg field, but you can implement a lot of those same tactics. I'm going to try and intercept him before he gets to that egg field, or I'm going to try and intercept him on his way back. And you might have the luxury, maybe you can watch that buck for a couple days from afar, figure out his program, and then really set up to execute, because like we talked about, you might only get 1 or 2 tries.
Right.
And if you blow him out the first time, he might change his program.
Yep, exactly. That's why I think a lot of guys that are going on those, like, they have a 5 to 7 day hunt that they're going on. I think a lot of the guys that are consistently successful, speaking to mule deer specifically, the guys that are really consistent in harvesting deer are way more patient than the guy like myself who goes out there and like sees a buck. It's like, all right, it's on. Let's go get him. The guy who really is kind of seasoned and is probably done it before, he's going to sit there. He'll watch that deer. Maybe today, maybe tomorrow again, and maybe again on the third day before he even makes a move. Mm-hmm. And then he's surgical on that move, and then, he either gets it or he doesn't,
I've talked to guys. I've never hunted high country mule deer with the bow, but guys are doing the same. They're like, I watched that deer for 4 days in the basin and figured out his program, or we're extremely patient, just making sure, like, hey, waiting for him to put himself into maybe a more stalkable spot where I'm like, he's going to, like, if I don't do it now, he's going to go away.
Yeah, he won't be there tomorrow.
Yeah, and like I said, I think those are, that's why those guys are getting them.
Yeah.
Is what you just discussed there, is that more of a all the time kind of thing that people are doing, or is that more of a rut hunt thing that people are doing? Because you also discussed, too, that you can do this late season thing.
Yeah.
I think what we were just describing, we bounced around a little bit, but talking about mule deer like in a high basin or on egg. I guess they might hit egg, in the late season as well. But I guess I was in my head mentally, I was thinking like early season, high country,
summer
patterns. Yep. They haven't begun to rut. They haven't pushed down yet.
Which we should talk about late season, though, because it's interesting. We talked about how your first few days of the season can be your best odds if you kind of done your scouting homework.
Yeah, so the late season must be impossible. It's just a waste of time.
Which is exactly what you would think, but it's weird because all of a sudden it flips again and it becomes another early season with snow. Like you go from early season where they're
Erik, shut up. Stop. Wait, stop. No, I'm just kidding. Keep going. How does it become more like an early season again?
Yep. So their patterns all of a sudden revert right back to where they were 3-4 months ago.
Because they're like, oh man, finally the gunshot stopped.
And their behavior, their biological behavior changes. So the rut is come and gone.
Okay.
Now they're super worn out. They're not focused on does anymore as much as they were a few months ago, and they're much more focused on like food sources and stuff like that.
Didn't they just go through essentially a very traumatically hard time of year?
Yep.
For them?
Elk or deer, they've run themselves pretty ragged.
Yeah, isn't the rut actually, when you think of it in human terms, you think, oh, hell yeah, the rut. Sounds awesome. But for a deer, actually, by the time they get done with the rut, some of them that are weaker deer, they don't make it.
Oh yeah, 100%. They're dying. Deer are dying during the rut because of the exhausted energy and all that stuff.
Stressful.
Stress, fighting. Some get killed in fights, which is unbelievable to like find a deer. A few years ago,
it's like the purge.
Yeah, I shot a buck on a morning hunt. I hit him really far back. I came back that afternoon. In between the time that I had shot that deer and came back, I'm walking back to my stand, kind of getting back to where I shot that buck. And I'm walking in, and all of a sudden I'm like, oh my God, there's a dead buck right by my stand. No way did that thing circle all the way around and die right there. Turns out, in between the time that I had left the tree and came back, there must have been a fight because there was a, nice looking 3-year-old 8-pointer with his neck broken and scars all over him. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen.
And just fresh and dead
fresh,
by the deer
he
you
was
had
still
killed.
warm. Like, I literally, when I was walking up, I'm like, oh, I just found my buck. But no, he had scars all over him. His neck was broke. It was the craziest thing ever.
What do you do in that case?
So I called the warden in that situation to have him come out and like look at the deer. He had a lot of stuff going on. He didn't actually come out. I had known him from like dealings with him in the past and stuff.
Stuff you don't want to talk about.
Yeah,
right. Let's not.
Back in before there were rules.
that was a lifetime ago. That was a different me.
Yeah, but so he actually didn't come out and look at the deer. He did issue me like a salvage tag, and I was able to.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah,
nice.
Keep the antlers and stuff, but the meat was like, I mean, when a deer dies in a stressful manner, they release all of these like crazy, whatever. I'm not a biologist, I don't know, but he was pretty spoiled. Like,
really,
even though he was only dead a short amount of time, he was all bruised up. Like I tried to at least get the back straps off him, and they were really, really like, bruised meat or like a bruised banana at the grocery store. You get those like. Where it's almost like an impact and it's kind of like jellyish. He had that stuff going on. Like it wasn't pretty.
And you're certain he wasn't there? Like
with like 100 because he was 10
Did you
yards.
find your deer?
I did find him right after that. Yeah. So it was super weird. Something happened where obviously that buck came in the area after I left my stand. A fight with that buck and assumingly another probably more dominant buck broke out, and that is the result of the rut.
That's not to get into story time, but I shot a Wisconsin buck during the gun season. Mm-hmm. Pretty nice one. And
for me, what does that mean?
It means big antlers.
Okay, cool.
Actually, for me, big antlers. For other guys, whatever. But, I wish I didn't even bring it up. But anyway, so I was gonna get it mounted, but one almost like I'd say. For sure, like one side and even wrapping around of his entire neck had these crazy gnarly like pus nodules all over it, slipped hair.
Yep.
And I can assume really only two things. I don't know if he got just in a severe buck fight, and then like multiple puncture wounds and some infection and type stuff because like it was just crazy gnarly pussy. Or potentially hit by a car at some point. It was interesting. Anyway, I couldn't I had to get a different cape for it because the taxidermy was like this isn't going to work.
The whitetail rut is a month of battle followed by the late season, which is 3 months of starvation.
Yeah,
essentially.
So they come out of that, and you're like.
Then they're trying to put the feed bag.
Dazed and confused deer.
Exactly. So then they come out of the rut and they're trying to, build back up everything they lost. So that late season hunting tactics really aren't that dissimilar to what you would be doing in early September.
Yep.
You hunt food sources.
Instead of does, it's food.
Exactly.
That they're desperately searching
and they're usually
for.
very close to it because they're not going to, they're not going to be walking a mile and a half to get to the food source because they flat out don't have the energy. So in the late season, if you do find a good food source, that's the time of year to stop and set up right on the food or very close to it because odds are they're
very
close.
Intriguing.
Which is tricky because oftentimes, those deer are no dummies, right? Mm-hmm. So they're going to bed in a spot. They know they're going to be vulnerable on that food source. At least I feel like they know that. And I guess I'm just going off, a couple spots that I like to hunt. Like I know when I'm getting in there, I've blown bucks out of there trying to hunt them during the late season because they can see my approach, right?
Yep, 100%.
The other thing with that is, like, even though those deer, like you said, they're vulnerable because now they, if they want to live, they have to eat, right? But versus the early season where they're, you might get a first crack at a deer that's been kind of in that summer pattern going out and feeding extremely comfortable.
In its nerf life.
And it's short nerf life during that time of year. These deer are on red alert.
Yeah.
I mean, they've been hunted from that archery season, possibly through the muzzleloader, through the rifle, or they know what's up.
Right.
They know it's game on. And so even though they need to get out to that food, they're pretty darn careful about it.
Definitely.
All right. Now, with a few minutes left, because I'm sure you two could talk about this type of thing forever,
I feel like we turned a bow hunting, like why bow hunting. Yeah, we turned like a why bow hunting is cool podcast into a deer hunting podcast.
That's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. Yep. Back to bow hunting specifically, though. What kind of bow you guys use?
I just got a new bow. It's a Hoyt RX3, and I think it's gonna be really cool.
I bought a PRS bow this year.
What the heck is that?
Long range, baby. I got a new Matthews that I totally like decked out for, with the Coos deer hunt this year and stuff like that in mind. I kind of set it up differently than I would a traditional whitetail bow, and it's got like a fancy sight, fancy rest, fancy this, fancy that. I'm going to be shooting them at 300 yards.
A true Wisconsin man.
Yes.
Versus Mark, a foreigner.
Wait, what? Oh, come on.
Anyway. And then I just picked up a trad bow.
Yep.
A takedown.
Also with a Coos deer hunt in mind.
Long bow. Also with a yeah, not exactly the first choice for many people.
Yep.
Maybe we'll be relying on your PRS bow out there.
Yes.
But what when it comes to choosing the bow, what made you choose the bows that you chose? Well, you had to just get the most Gucci bow, the most expensive bow, so you just did.
Kinda. So I had a bow prior to this. It was about 5 years old. Loved it. It was awesome.
What brand was it?
He's nitpicking at me right now. I had a Hoyt Nitram 30. I loved it. It was a phenomenal bow.
Foreigner.
Yeah, I know. It shot fantastic. I've killed
There's another. I honestly have no personal preference at all. So
Eric killed two giant bucks last year with that bow, and he said, "I need to make some changes."
Yeah, I know. I shot a bow at. I shot the Matthews Vortex, which I have now at WHCE last year, and fell in love with the way it felt. And shortly after, my Hoyt was sold, and this was bought.
Right. And you got.
So I've got the RX3. So prior to that,
can you tell me something? When you have shot different compound bows, can you actually tell the difference?
Oh, there's differences. I think we've kind of gotten
to me, they all look the same. It's like somebody who's never shot a gun before looking at AR-15s, and they're like, "Yeah, I don't get it. They all look the same."
Right.
Good point.
Yeah, fair enough, right? There's a lot of similarities. You could probably look at, any compound bow nowadays, and, it's almost like, there's differences, but, like an AR or bolt action gun, there's similarities amongst them. I'm trying bows in my life, gosh, I had a Hoyt, which one? It had the red line limbs. That's an old bow. And then I had Carbon Spider. Yep. Which I loved.
And this one that you got now is also carbon, right?
It's a carbon, yeah. And man, we're talking about late season hunts, and there is, your bow, it's a great bow. But versus aluminum riser, right? So I've got a carbon riser, and I really like that carbon riser. It's lightweight,
warm to the touch.
It's essentially warm to the touch. So you get in a late season situation where you're holding your bow a lot, which I like to do. It makes a difference. And so as far as comfort on your hand and not freezing your fingers off.
So that's what hold? That's what connects the upper sticks to the bottom sticks.
Okay.
Limbs.
The straight piece between the limbs.
It's the thing you hold.
Yep.
Okay. Makes sense. And you guys shoot compound because
I've just always shot a compound because essentially, we're talking about it's a more efficient tool. Mm-hmm. I feel like, I don't want to offend anybody, but it's easier to stay proficient at. So if you do have limited time to practice, I think you can get back into the swing of things a little bit easier. There's also more going on though. Yeah. So in some ways there's more, I guess, to go wrong, but there's also a lot on that thing that makes things go right.
I was just talking about this recently with a friend of mine who works for the Archery Trade Association, and I mentioned in passing somehow that a compound bow has a longer effective range than a recurve, and he corrected me there, and he's like, well, not necessarily. That's all up to the archer. So you guys are talking with Clay Hayes here in a little bit, and that guy, his effective range with his recurve is probably further than some guys' effective range with their compound. Sure. So it all ends up in the hands of the archer.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
But the takeaway there is the compound is more forgiving on the front end for folks who are just like we talked earlier, we want someone, like if someone wants to like go bow hunting right now, let's say they want to go like in a few weeks, go buy a bow at an archery shop. If you buy a recurve, you're probably, or a compound right off the shelf at your local pro shop, they're going to be able to set you up, and you'll be whitetail ready or deer ready, whatever hunt you're going on, within a few weeks. The
Whereas
recurve
me,
is
with my
just
trad bow, I probably going to be just stump shooting out there and just looking for deer.
there is a more of a learning curve on the front end, but I think once you have the front end of it mastered, there's nothing that says, because you have a recurve, you can't shoot as far as we can with a compound.
Yeah.
That's up to the person. Just like, I could pick up one of the guys' PRS rifles downstairs.
Right.
And I wouldn't be able to shoot it as well as the owner of that gun. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
I got a trad bow because my brother Dave got a trad bow. Not just because he did, but I just thought it was. So Eric and I have had this conversation before.
Well, because you're Jim and you like to be different and...
Right, well, yeah.
Lever action 308.
We discussed this. Yeah, lever action 308, whatever. We discussed this, Eric and I, because Eric has been shooting that old Ruger M77 270, and I keep giving him crap for it. Like, you got to upgrade that thing, man.
Yep.
And he said, no, he just likes the way it feels. He likes that it's simple. It's no nonsense. It's kind of old school.
Doesn't even have a magazine that I can lose.
It doesn't. No, it's got a wood stock. It's heavy. Not as accurate. Oh wait, now I'm mentioning the negative. Sorry. Anyway, but then when it comes to guns, I tend to like some of the more fancy stuff. Of course, I'm the guy with the Ruger American, but I'm soon to probably upgrade that.
Yep.
After 5 years of trying to show the world that you can do just about anything with a Ruger American. But then when it comes to the archery, I have zero interest in the compound bows. To me, they are the most boring things ever. And I'm sorry for those out there who love compound bows. I'm just going to say it now. Mark, I just love insulting people, whereas I know you're a little bit more careful and more strategic with the way...
I'm not a fighter, Jim. I don't want to get beat up.
Right. I just think compound bows are the most boring things on the planet. But then when I saw Dave with his sleek, svelte, classy-looking longbow. He's got a takedown one and everything. I was like, that is cool. I don't know if it was me harkening back to when I was a kid watching Lord of the Rings and Legolas was just machine gun arrowing orcs off the castle wall. But yeah, something about that clicked, so I ended up getting one. But yeah, there's definitely going to be a learning curve. I've already learned that. I've shot it a couple of times, and it, what was it, like a 3-foot group at 3 feet?
Yep.
It's quite difficult, so I got to do quite a bit of practice.
But then again, I mean, that's part of that fun process.
Right. I know, which I hate to admit that it is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But the trad bow, like I also got a takedown like Dave's.
Yeah.
And you take that thing down, which actually I've learned that I don't really want to take it down that much because you don't want to have the strings unravel.
Okay.
Yep.
Because then it changes something.
Yeah,
anyway.
Twists and all that stuff.
Yeah, whatever. So I probably won't take it down a whole lot, but there's always that option. Exceptionally lightweight.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we all know Lightweight Dave. If you haven't listened to the Lightweight podcast from a while back at this point, but Dave is Lightweight Dave. And he was probably just floored when he first saw the difference in weight between some carbon compound bow versus his now trad bow that he likes to carry around. Is that, Mark, you talk with him about that. Is that pretty much the biggest reason why I did it, or is he also kind of weird like me in that he wanted to do the manual transmission of bows?
You know, in my discussions with Dave about that, and obviously he can speak for himself a lot better than I can, but I think he was drawn to the simplicity of it. Right?
Yeah.
Like we're talking about, just less to go wrong. Like you don't have to adjust your sight or this, that, the other.
Right,
I mean, like it doesn't have a sight. Like
when I was in college, I remember I got a single speed bike. And when I would go up to the bike racks and I'd see the kids with the 10-speed, 12-speed, 24-speed, whatever speed bike they had, and the chain was off, and I was like, yeah, that's not going to go back on real easy.
No.
Meanwhile, mine get knocked around the bike racks, chain falls off, just whoop, right back up on that sprocket, and I get going.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. You know, versus me, you know, I think the sight that I'm going to put on my bow, he doesn't even have a sight, and he's like, oh, I love this because it doesn't have a sight.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at that CBE Engage 3-pin because it's going to have a slider, and I can dial my sight similar to how you would an elevation turret on a rifle scope. You know, so it's all it's all in what you're looking for. But yeah, I mean, I think he's drawn to the simplicity, how lightweight it is, less to go, but conversely, a lot more goes into perfecting that craft to be effective with it and confident. We always, from a hunting perspective, you want to be able to take that animal cleanly and efficiently. And so,
right.
You're going to have to practice and shoot a lot more.
And the time it's taken him to get effective with that bow out to, I would say, probably, I think the last I talked to him, he said to like 20 yards, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
He probably could shoot a lot of deer with a compound bow.
Oh, yeah.
But he's choosing to forego that in order to just learn up a cool craft.
Right.
You know what's kind of funny, though, is I'm going to start using this term because all of us have these alternate personas. See, there's bow mark, and then there's gun mark.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to bow mark likes the toys and the fancy things and the,
it's true.
Highly technical. He likes getting stuff tuned right. He likes it all custom, carbon. Rifle mark, gun mark. I just
300 wisdom.
For 300 wisdom. I want it to come from the factory. I want to get factory ammo. I don't want any of that nonsense. That's gun mark. And then you have gun Erik, who likes really, really traditional
wood
guns, wood stocks. And then you have bow Erik.
Yep. Custom color.
Custom PRS bows.
Yeah.
And then you have me with gun me, and it's the opposite because then you go to bow me, and I'm like trying to be a British longbowman fighting the German whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
The Franks. I don't know. I'm making that up now. What else? I don't know. We talked a lot about bows and arrows and archery and deer and stuff.
Yeah, I think I don't know. There's so much to it.
The big thing I think to where like if someone listening to this is thinking about getting into archery, hopefully this made them make that decision. But just go to a place where you can shoot them all. Like, I was just talking with Sawyer the other day. Like, he's thinking about getting a bow and getting into it. And he's like, oh, what's a Matthews going to run me? Or what's this brand going to run me? Like, don't have a stigma towards any one brand or over the other. Like, go to a place where you can get your hands on as many bows, as many different styles of bows, like including recurves, and shoot them all and pick the one that you like, because everyone is built a little bit different. Everyone has different needs. If you're someone who maybe you don't like heights and you like hunting on the ground, so you're going to be hunting out of a ground blind a lot, then you're going to want a short axle-to-axle bow.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're going out west and you're going to be shooting really long range and stuff like that, then maybe look at something with a longer axle-to-axle length, something that is going to be a little bit more forgiving for, tighter accuracy out to those extended ranges, and just figure out what it is that you want out of the bow and let the bow kind of pick you, which sounds super freaking weird, cheesy, but I really do think there's different applications for, you're not going to take a Ruger M77 on a deer drive. For that, I got had my lever action 44 meg.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So you got a different tool for the job. So, and there are bows that do it all. Like, you can kind of find the hybrids that are equally as home in the whitetail woods as they are on the prairie for a antelope hunt where you're going to shoot at 65 yards or whatever.
Right.
If people weren't watching on YouTube, they just swore you said that whole "let the bow find you" thing around a fire and some dream catchers. And,
exactly. Yeah. Roasting marshmallow, talking about our feelings.
Yeah. That's a good last call, I'd say, as MC Ryan has the blood red screen showing as we're over an hour here. It continues to grow. My last call I'll make in order to give Mark some time for his couple is that I already have too many things that I enjoy tinkering with that take up too much of my time, so I probably shouldn't have gotten a trad bow in many ways, but I do like the tinker ability of it, which you can do just as well with rifles.
Yep.
But the fact that you can utilize the bow more often for hunting than you can a rifle is definitely attractive. And there's definitely something about the idea of, and I have yet to do it, but I will this year, of going out And again, like I said, whether I'll be actually taking a shot at a deer or not, or just stump shooting while looking at deer, remains to be seen. But the idea of going out in the woods with nothing but a stick and a string and, a sharp and pointy thing, I mean, something about that is pretty neat and pretty unique. It even brings you further back, which we've discussed many times on this podcast, the idea of hunting. It's so primitive.
Definitely.
When you go out with a bow and an arrow, maybe I'm romanticizing it quite a bit in my head or whatever, but something about it's pretty cool.
Yeah, definitely.
And so that's what I'll leave it at. If I had 48 hours in one day, man, I'd be reloading all the time.
I know.
I'd be shooting my bow just like crazy good. I'd be rebuilding cars then at the same time still. But alas, we only have half that.
You ready?
Yeah, I'm ready. Prepared.
So here are my final thoughts on bow hunting. I think as humans we like to test ourselves, right? And I think bow hunting adds an extra layer of challenges into the hunt. I think it offers you a chance to have additional and maybe different or extra experiences with the animals we pursue, just because you generally are going to spend more time in the woods just due to the nature of it. You're going to have closer experiences, interactions with these animals. You're going to be able to have calling interactions with these animals. And I think that just really adds a lot to the overall experience of the hunt, right? As far as, in the very beginning, we talked about it being fun, right? Like bow hunting is fun. Shooting bows is fun. Like it is fun. And a nice thing about a bow oftentimes is that you don't have to have the room that you do to shoot a rifle. Heck, I can shoot in my basement. I can shoot to 17 yards, right? I can do that in my basement. A lot of people, depending on the ordinances in your neighborhood, which I actually can't shoot my bow out in my yard in my neighborhood. I'd sure like to get that changed. But
I'm not saying I've just done it anyway.
Me either.
But
you could probably just do it anyway.
Well, no, I didn't say that either.
I
was
didn't.
just
Me
kinda,
neither.
I was
I
just
misspoke.
leaving it.
Yeah.
I was just kind of leaving a statement out there. Actually,
yeah, it's just take it how you want. But but you can shoot your bow in your yard, right? So if you want to get that practice, you can. You don't have to go to a range or get way out in the country to do that. If you do live in the country,
you got plenty.
You're all set,
right?
So I mean, your opportunity to practice for the hunt or just because you like shooting is kind of always there. So there's kind of that aspect to it too. So that's what I got. That's my final.
Wow, that was actually like pretty much just one.
Just kind of I bridged a couple there.
Good job.
I like it.
Get a bow, whatever one you decide to get, whatever fits you. Start shooting. Have fun.
Definitely.
Go bow hunting.
I had a comparison in my head, but I'm not sure I want to say it because I feel like I might make more people mad. I was going to say bow hunting is a bit like golf, but I know a lot of people hate golf. But you can't just like go out and just kind of like expect to just go out and swing a club and hit a golf ball off the ground. Like you got to get, but when you actually do it, it's kind of fun. But if you just watch people playing golf, it's kind of boring.
And somehow the frustration is part of what you like.
Right. And then like when you actually do finally get a good hit, one good hit out of an entire 18 holes of golf is enough to make you come back again.
Hunting is like golf.
No, stop comparing things to golf.
I had it.
All right.
Your driving game is one thing. Your short game is another. By doing bow hunting and rifle hunting, you're going to be a better golfer, a.k.a. hunter.
Oh, that was pretty good. All right, next time, Vortex Nation, we will compare hunting and other things that we enjoy to a better sport. Sorry for those of you who do like golf. Geez. We should go through and tally how many people I've pissed off in this podcast. I think it's partly because we're still running on lack of sleep getting back from the Vortex Extreme.
Yep.
Woke up this morning, didn't really know where I was. But hey, figured what better day to record a podcast? And MC Ryan is giving us he's going to be giving us the shut up thing here pretty soon, I'm sure.
Yep.
Okay. With that said, thanks for listening, everybody. Happy hunting and shooting. We'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
All right, that'll wrap it up for this episode of the Vortex Nation podcast. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hit that subscribe button so you can always stay up to date on the latest happenings over here at the Vortex Nation podcast. You can also follow us on Instagram at Vortex Nation Podcast. Again, everybody, thanks, and happy hunting and shooting. We appreciate it. Have a good one.